Happy government shutdown day. We've been here before, right? I mean, there's precedent for what's going on. But I thought I would take the opportunity today to talk about how do we get here for the shutdown? Why are we here, right? So what is at stake? What are folks arguing about? And then where do we go from here? And then I might, just for fun at the end, add a little bit on some analysis I've done on a certain kind of tariff, just because it's fun. I mean, why not dig in and understand this stuff? So I'm going to be looking at my notes a little bit. I'm not trying to ignore you. It's just I want to make sure I get everything accurate as well as I can, because I know that there's a lot of opinion around this, a lot of feeling and emotion. So I'm going to try to just go through some factual stuff, and then you can do some more digging on your own as well and kind of understand where your opinion lands on all of this stuff. So, unless you've been maybe hiding in a bunker, which might not be a bad idea, given the state of the world right now, you've probably heard that as of midnight last night, the government shut down. So what does this mean? Well, it's a little bit dramatic. The government hasn't shut down completely. It's not like the lights are off, the doors are locked, no one's going to work, and things are just done. No, that's not how it works. Like I said, we've been here before. We've had 20, 30-day shutdowns before, once during Obama's time for the Affordable Care Act, and then I think almost 30, 31 days or something in the previous Trump administration to fund the border wall. He was holding out, and the border wall didn't happen. So we've been here. It seems like this time it's a little bit more emotional. So let's just walk through some facts. I'm going to put on my spectacles so I can make sure I read this correctly, but I just want to make sure that we understand the facts of what does this actually mean. So our U.S. government operates with a budget, right? And they have what's called discretionary is important, discretionary appropriations that get passed each year by Congress. There should be, just like companies and just like if you budget as a family, there should be annual, every year appropriations. So, one little Jeopardy factoid for you, the government runs on September 30 fiscal year, which means that as of yesterday, the 2025 fiscal year basically ended. So they don't operate on what we call a calendar year, December 31, because, why? Why would I? Anyway, so the end of the 2025 fiscal year was yesterday. And because there's no annual funding measure that was put forth, they're trying for what's called, we've talked about this before, a continuing resolution, which some people just call CR, which you can do to sound super smart, a CR. So what does that do? It's just like a stopgap, right? It's a Band-Aid. And then a month later, guess what? You need to do it again. And that's been the theme of this government recently, is just passing these CRs to kind of Band-Aid. At some point, we need to get some annual budgets in place, or an annual. They only go out 1 year, right? God forbid they plan more than that. There's just way too many politics involved, I guess. Okay? So, what does that mean if we don't get the annual budget passed or these CRs? So what happens when they say the government shuts down? Well, there is something, you want to sound smart, it's called the Anti-Deficiency Act. So what that says is that if we don't pass these discretionary spending bills, whether temporary or long-term, federal agencies they are prohibited by law from spending any money when the appropriations lapse, unless there's some outside legal authority. So what does that mean? So it means non-essential things are suspended. So what does that mean? Employees could be furloughed. They're not fired. It just means you either have to work without pay or just go home until we figure this out. Neither of which is awesome, right? It's not a great situation. What are these non-essential things? Well, let's think about what is considered essential. It's probably the easier way to think about it, and then just, process of elimination. So essential, military, law enforcement, air traffic control, that kind of stuff. That should continue, you would hope, right? Otherwise, maybe don't travel on an airplane for a little bit. And they will get money once the funding resumes. So typically, it doesn't mean they're paid. There's no money for them if there's no CR, right? Now, remember I said discretionary. So what do they consider non-discretionary? So what's not really part of this budgeting process, the Band-Aid for a month or the funding for the full year? Things that are considered non-discretionary. So, Social Security, Medicare, they're not subject to that same annual approval, and they can generally continue through the shutdown. So, it doesn't mean that everything stops, right? It's not awesome. I'm not being like, woo, shutdown. It's not awesome. It highlights that there are some pretty big divides within our government on what's important, what to be included, and what's not. And just hard to come to a compromise, I guess. Anyway, so what's at stake? Why are we here, and what's the big deal? So if you remember this big, beautiful bill that Trump and the Republicans put together had a lot of controversial cuts in it. They wanted one super clean, big, ginormous bill that captured everything they wanted to do. And, some of it's controversial, right? Cuts to Medicaid, banning transgender care in certain circumstances, especially in the military, a lot of stuff, right? And Democrats are like, NFW, man. We don't like it, right? The issue, let's remind ourselves, the Republicans, which is Trump's party, control the White House, obviously, the House and the Senate. So why couldn't they pass what they wanted? Here's the issue. There's a procedural issue in the Senate. They have 50 votes, which, should work. Oh no, not for this one. They need 55 to pass that. So they would need 5 Democrats to cross over and agree with them, and that hasn't happened. So here we are, we're stuck. The House passed it, I think to fund the government through November 21st, but then it went to the Senate, and the Senate was like, oh, yeah, no, we're not going to cross over that aisle. And here's why. What are the biggest sticking points? The biggest one is health care and subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. So, as many of you know, when the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, was passed, the whole reason was to extend insurance benefits and coverage to those who either were denied insurance or couldn't afford the premiums. So, as part of this, they were given tax credits. They were called enhanced premium tax credits. So those folks who went on the exchange, that's where they bought the insurance, that's actually where I get my insurance as well. And if they qualify for a subsidy, it would help them pay for these premiums. So what is happening, and why is this all held up? Well, these enhanced premium tax credits were expanded during COVID. And during the time and in subsequent legislation, those tax credits were extended through the end of 2025. So as of December 31 of this year, those tax credits are going to expire. And you're like, yeah, you mean, sweet, but that's at the end of December. Hold your horses. Hold up. Here's why it's important, at least to the Democratic Party, and why they're saying, we're not passing any bill unless you extend those tax credits. Why does it matter? Well, let's back up. It is estimated that anywhere from 20 to 24 million people in this country purchase their health insurance through through the exchange. And of that number, the vast, vast, vast majority qualify for subsidies. So what happens if those subsidies go away? Well, this is not my math. They're smarter than me. According to the Congressional Budget Office, now remember, this is the group that analyzes everything financially. If there's any change in legislation, they put the numbers into their crazy-ass model, and they come out with the implications. They said, not me, not some partisan group. First of all, they estimate 4 million people would get kicked off of insurance. Well, why? Because as part of this, it wasn't just the subsidy. It also expanded the definition of folks who could be included, who couldn't be dinged for certain pre-existing conditions. So it expanded the population that could be covered. That would be gone. Okay, so that's 4 million people kicked off insurance. The remainder who got subsidies, if those subsidies go away, the math that the CBO did was that their premiums, that monthly payment that you pay to get health insurance, would at least double. Think about that. Double. And who are these folks who qualify for subsidies, right? Generally, people who weren't covered before don't have insurance through an employer, right? And probably can't afford the premium. So it's hitting a portion of the population that is most likely the most vulnerable. Okay? So the Democrats are saying, no, I'm not going to let you pass this spending unless you agree to further extend these tax credits. And Republicans are saying, hold up, stop the crazy. That's not until December 31. So let's focus on this bill that we have now. Let's keep policy matters out of it. Let's just focus on fiscal stuff. And let's pass this, and then we'll discuss health care later. Right? Let's just get this done. I mean, that sounds, I don't want to say smart or okay. Here's the issue. Here's the wrinkle. When you have insurance, let's say that you don't, so I don't get insurance through an employer, right? I purchase it on my own for myself and my family through the exchange. I do not qualify for a subsidy. I can tell you, every fall, I get a letter in the mail from my insurance company either telling me that the policy that I purchased the previous year is still valid and it will continue for the next year. However, maybe premiums change, coverage changes, etc. Or I get a letter saying, you know what, that plan you had last year no longer exists. We need you to go back on the exchange and find something else. When do I get that letter? It varies. It's usually September, October, because when does open enrollment start, folks? It starts in November. So what Democrats are saying is, we can't wait until the next negotiation on spending, which would happen in November. We can't wait until November to fix this. That is too late. By that point, the insurance companies have already done all of their calculations and sent out the letters to their clients about what their premiums are going to be. And if this isn't extended, they're going to double or triple premiums. We have to do it now. That makes sense too. Here's another rule. Never, ever negotiate from a point of weakness. What do I mean? Right now, Democrats have this funding bill, and they're using that as leverage to say, hell no, I want the tax credits passed. Well, what happens if they say, yeah, let's just discuss it later? Weak, no leverage. There's no way. It's not going to happen. And they understand that. And so that's where we're at in terms of butting heads. I don't know personally where we're going to end up on it. You know, I know that they're very, very far apart. It probably doesn't help when you're trying to negotiate with the other party if you have someone who puts out a video that is quite racist and inflammatory against the House and Senate minority leaders. Just saying. Probably doesn't help negotiations. So, where are we? Well, who knows? The president has said that he may have to furlough up to 750,000 workers. He's made that very public. You know, it's very much going back and forth. Your fault, your fault. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. The parties always do that, right? But this time it seems just a little bit different. It's very much more partisan. It's very, very much divided. It's very heated because it's gotten personal. So, again, has this happened before? It has. The only 2 times that it's actually lasted for a significant amount of time, like I said, was once during, I mean, this has happened during Carter, Reagan, Bush, but it's usually been like a day or 2, right? And it's figured itself out. This time, no. There's one, well, there are 2 or 3, excuse me. One during Clinton's time, and I think it was like 16 days. At that time, it was the longest ever that had happened. And this was when Republicans were demanding cuts like Medicaid, Medicare, and some other stuff, and Clinton said, no, Democrats finally won that argument, but that was 21 days, excuse me. Obama was 16 days, and that was around the Affordable Care Act, and the Affordable Care Act was eventually just passed. And then the longest ever was actually under the Trump's administration. His first administration was 35 days. And he wanted almost $6 billion for a border wall with Mexico. Didn't end up getting it. Government revved back up without a border wall. So, again, it's happened before. This time just seems a lot more heated. There's a lot more finger pointing. The healthcare thing, the Democrats are saying they're not going to back down. No, because to them it's important. And it's not a small number of people. I'm going to throw in something now. I've heard a lot of rhetoric and a lot of comments of, oh, the Democrats want to make health care free for illegals. And that's why they are not agreeing to the Republican spending bill. Okay, folks. Big step back. Let's be clear. It is illegal in the United States, against the law, to use taxpayer-funded dollars for health care for illegal immigrants. Period. And that is not what is being discussed. Let's just dispel that myth, okay? There are a lot of myths out there. Things snowball when they're forwarded on in Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever it is. No, that's not what's happening here, okay? So that's what's going on. I wish I had some insight. You know what? Tomorrow something more exciting will happen. I don't know if I'm going to talk about tariffs because that's going to take quite a bit of time. And there's just one special thing I wanted to dive into, but maybe I'll do that tomorrow on a separate topic. But, so what can we do from a day-to-day perspective now that this shutdown has happened? Well, first of all, I hope that DC gets their act together because their heads out of their asses and figures something out. It's just the blame game is out of control. Both parties, right? Blame game. Let's just get shit done because the average American, this is exhausting. And it's not just exhausting, it's affecting people's lives, their finances, their family, their mental health, everything. Get some shit done, DC, please. Okay? Figure your shit out. Now, and I said to other people, President Trump, whether you like him or not, was very clear on his agenda when he ran for president. I don't think any of this should be a surprise to anybody. This is his campaign that he ran on and he won on, and that his followers, at least at the time, or constituents, wanted. This is why he was voted in. So for those of you who are like, I can't believe we got here, believe it. This is what was voted for. So what can you do? If you agree with what's going on, maybe say thank you to your legislators or what have you. If you don't agree with what's going on, as I've always told my kids and the people that work with me, if you have a complaint, please come to me with a solution. What is that solution? Get involved. Even in local politics, if you want to, volunteer, right? Run for school council. I don't know, run for city council. Donate. Do things. Just don't sit on your hands and be like, oh shit, this sucks. Get involved. And I know that it can be hard. You don't need to be the person out there leading the charge, running for an election all the time. You could be behind the scenes and do stuff too, because I've heard things like, oh, I'm scared to be seen publicly saying something negative about the current administration or their... Then do something behind the scenes, but just don't sit on your ass and do nothing. Either way, please get involved. We live in a country where only half of the eligible voting population votes. So, do something, whether you are in support of or against. Don't just sit and complain and sit on your ass. It's the joy of the country. We have the ability to step up and get involved and do things to make our voices heard. So on that note, folks, happy hump day. Happy birthday to one of my kids. And head up. We'll get through it, just like everything else. And by the way, the markets don't seem to really care right now. They're just kind of seeing through it, at least for now. We'll see what happens in the days ahead. But again, thank you. Please feel free to share this. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple. It's on a variety of places. YouTube. Feel free to share. I always love the feedback. And enjoy your Wednesday. Take care, guys.